Hi everyone, welcome to the Befores and Afters podcast. I'm Ian Fales from Befores and Afters. Today we're looking at the Kid Cudi TV special slash animated film called Entergalactic, currently streaming on Netflix. The heavily pushed and stylized look of Entergalactic required a massive design effort, and then final animation production and more design by DNEG Animation. To discuss that, I talked to a couple of members of the DNEG team. First there's VFX Soup Archie Donato, then animation director Kapil Sharma, and digital producer Chrissy Metch. We go into a lot of detail about the technical hurdles they faced, the tests they had to do, and the current trends in stylized animation that are changing the industry. Let's jump into the conversation now. Well, hi everyone, thanks so much for joining me.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm really excited to talk to each of you about your work on this amazing film, which just has such an amazing visual style. Of course, that's what we'll be concentrating on. But I think an interesting part of this that is, something that's happened at a fair few different visual effects studios in the past 20 years is visual effects studios getting into animation. And sometimes I get fascinated with things like the roles that happen on these animated films that are often done in sort of a visual effects context. So I like to ask about the roles first and sort of what each of you saw as your role on the film and in fact what you did. Archie, as visual effects supervisor, maybe I'll start with you. What does a visual effects supervisor do on an animated project like this?
It's a fantastic question. Visual effects implies that we are part of the visual effects, more of a live action industry where we put effects in. But in the animation industry, visual effects supervisor and a producer are the two people that really lead the project forward. My responsibility lies two ways to my team at DNEG, but also to the client side. And so my responsibility is to make the visual, especially because we are in the customer service in a way. We are not making our own content. We basically work for a Netflix content. It could be a Warner Brothers content. So our clients usually are from external studios, and so when they come to us, they come with concepts, with ideas, with paintings, images, inspiration, all kinds of stuff. And my job becomes to dissect that, and to get the team prepped to make sure that we can actually turn this into a in this case 90-minute, 94-minute film. So I am managing both the client expectations from that standpoint, but I'm also available to my team for any creative guidance. I am the first stop before the images go to a client, and the last stop, basically, because I need to ensure that certain quality is delivered, and then obviously Chrissy will talk to you about the schedule part of it. But I also have to work very closely with Chrissy as my producer, because I know what it takes to do the difficult and a challenging work. And then she knows what time constraints we need to have financially, how we're going to make this work and stuff like that. So this usually we become basically a one unit, especially towards the end of the film, so.
Yeah. Well, Chrissy, I think you're credited as digital producer, which I think is a
Yes.
really actually interesting credit name, and I really mean that. I am interested in the actual credit title. So tell me about that role.
Like Archie said, we're there to deliver a client's vision. So digitally, I'm responsible to make sure that happens. And also, like as Archie said, we work together so closely. So, I'll come to Archie asking what we need to do to creatively create that vision. And I'm the go-between client, studio, and my team to make sure, A, they're not overworked, they're doing too much to create that vision, and also convey that back to the client with the creative expectations alongside the schedule and the money. So it's a delicate balance because we want to bring this vision to life exactly how they want it. But there's a budget for everything and a time frame for everything. So yeah, so I'm the go-between of it all.
Awesome. And Kapil, as animation director, how would you describe that role on Intergalactic?
Well, it was similar in a way that I'm dealing with directors. So my main job comes because he's directing it, and we have our own team at DNEG. And I find that the best way I see my job is like making sure we understand exactly what Fletch as a director was looking for and was asking in the characters, and then we provide those solutions because he doesn't have solution for everything, but he knows the base emotions he wants to get. So I find myself as a bridge between him. On a actual live action movie, you'll have director directly dealing with the actors, and then you get everything out of it. But in animation, it's a bit tricky because it's not one person being the actor. There's like 40 animators trying to animate the same movie. So it becomes quite important to keep them together and really understand what director is also looking for. So it's kind of, again, creating this bridge and really providing the creative solutions and creative ideas which will help the movie to look better and shine more. So it's similar, but with animation side, we're acting more of a bridge between my team and director and making sure that they align pretty well.
Awesome. It just so happens today that the day we're talking, an article I wrote for a different magazine, not Befores and Afters, VFX Voice magazine, was released that talked about stylized animation. Now, I wrote about this stylized animation months ago for this magazine article. I wish Intergalactic had been out when I wrote this article because it in some ways fits in absolutely with the narrative of the piece I wrote. And that's where I want to go with this chat. Archie, coming back to you, clearly this film has a certain look and feel, a style of animation. I'm very curious about the earliest kind of discussions you had with the creative team about what that look was and also what you'd need to solve technically, artistically, to get that look.
Absolutely. It's a great question. And that article was very timely as well, the one you were talking about, because as we know, every animated film now that's coming out has a certain amount of what we refer to as a pushed look, which is basically heavily stylized look. For many, many years, I am an animation veteran myself, and we did very much a Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks style films, and they had their own incredible value and they were fantastic. But what we started to realize as an industry, I think, is that we are not taking advantage of the full capacity of what our software, hardware, and our ability to make those images, So we started to really get interested in pushing that look as far as humanly possible and making basically paintings come alive. So that leads me to this project where when I was approached, I'm from Los Angeles. I moved to London for this project. And when I got a call from chief creative of DNEG, David Prescott, and he called me one day and he said, listen, I got a project. It was COVID had started a month ago, or maybe a week ago, and he called me, he said, I have a project that's got your name written all over it because we worked before together. And he really knew that, having spent a lot of time in more of a quote unquote traditional CG animation, I always craved to kind of, push the limits and really take it to a next level. And so he said, this is your opportunity right here. And I was like, I don't know, man. I was like, the COVID just started. Moving across the pond, from California, I was on the fence. And he said, let me send you some artwork. I have a PDF the client gave me. If you don't like it, you can turn me down and stuff like that. I looked at that PDF and I was like, okay, where's the next flight to London? And the reason why was because as soon as I opened it, I realized that was something that I've been waiting in my career for a long time to do, where departing from that classical, what they refer to, especially at Netflix, is the CG look, computer graphic look. And they wanted to take it into this different direction. So when we started talking to the creatives, first thing they said to me is they said, we want you as an audience to step in into the paintings. We want you to live in those paintings. This is a story of a Black couple in New York City in their early 20s, in this gorgeous city around surrounding them, and we want audience to feel that, you know, that start of the new love, the awkwardness, everything that comes with it. And it was described to me in a very emotional and non-graphical. It was more like, you know, this is what we want to do. It was described to me more of like a live action film than anything else. And so a couple of projects were mentioned is, imagine When Harry Met Sally, but in New York City with two young kids, you know, and stuff like that. So a lot of that set the tone for what we were doing. But the visually, to answer your question, they gave us a ton of paintings. They were incredible artwork that was already done before DNEG was involved in this. They handed me those paintings and they basically said, make this happen. You know, that was the big challenge. So we started to reverse engineer our pipeline, and I will be the first one to say this, that generally animation studios, you were talking about some of the even visual effects studios now starting to get into the animation side of it. We did not have all the tools to maintain this incredibly pushed graphic, this beautiful painted look. So what we started to do is basically break our own tools to make it happen. And so, you know, tools designed for A, B, and C, and I'm asking it to do, you know, J, K, L, M, and O, you know. So it was a very difficult challenge, but most studios are now pushing it, and especially Netflix, at the time, under the leadership of Mike Moon, with the adult animation. They really wanted to move away from the traditional CG look. So we used to have a joke on production among the creatives ourselves that we called it remove the stink of CG. Make it look like a painting. So it should not feel like you're watching a CG movie. It should feel like you're watching a painting come alive.
Well, I'll come back to you, Archie, and ask you about the specific tools that you might have developed to help enable that. Kapil, just coming to you on this early stage, I'm very curious about any tests that were done at DNEG Animation to help sell Netflix or to help realize you could actually get it done.
We didn't really have to sell Netflix right away because you know we had the project, but it was still a challenge in a way that we do want to make sure it is what it needs to be rather than anything we can easily do, right? There's quite a few. So this is first time I personally worked so close to VFX Soup as well, Archie, and how lucky I was to have actually Archie on it, just because that's such a distinct look. Even the faces were painted in a very distinct way. So I think we went in two directions. One, we decided let's stay on step, just because that seems to serve the painterly look really well. Few of the movies we were kind of looking for inspiration was I Lost My Body was the big one. And I know everybody thinks Spider-Verse is closer, but I Lost My Body it's just really how different that movie was, how calm it was, and we just wanted to capture something similar. But we just wanted to go a bit more further because we required a greater range of emotions we needed to achieve out of these characters. So I remember me, Archie, and we have one animator called Ramon. We sat initially and we literally broke the face paint with planes. And then we kind of just moved them around just to see, can we maintain the paint brushes not getting destroyed when the face is moving? So we did that experiment. We did the whole face poses. We showed it to director, to Fletch. One thing which was good in this case is Fletch was also very clear what he wanted his characters to be. So I guess one of the most successful tests we had is Kid Cudi walking, off a footpath. And it's a video we have of Kid Cudi when he had, I think, started in the industry, like I'm Kid Cudi. And we kind of tried to imitate the same one, but in our style. So Ramon kind of took it, we animated him walking this, and we tested everything in that test. We tested the step animation, how that's going to look, the relationship of the character with the camera, because it's going to be super jerky if camera is moving smooth with the characters on step. So we had to do like we had to really get rid of all these doubts and all these technical issues before we can commit to step animation, which was actually surprisingly quite, not very hard. Uh, I think where it became more interested is we did a bunch of tests where we wanted to mix 2D and 3D together, because this is where we want to remove the stink of CG from it, right? So initial test where I kind of did one where we had a bunch of 3D characters with, in background, just 2D planes, doing nothing, just 2D planes. But the way you animated it, it merged pretty well. So it kind of was okay. But then Archie kind of took that one. And then the Archie and their team we did a whole test of pretty lighting with actual 2D, a bit animated. I think it was After Effects, Archie, you animated those ones.
Yeah.
And we combine all of that, and boom, it merged so well. I think that test really kind of showed all of us now, like, okay, we know what this movie can look like, and it is going to be something special. So just, have this mix of 2D and 3D with step, and really spending a lot of time on face to make sure that we are able to achieve the kind of, emotion we want to achieve. And it was good initial, like 3-4 months, where I would say 2 to 3 months, where we did all these tests, showed it to director as much as we can. And by the time we started production, we knew pretty well what we needed to be done. So we didn't struggle much while we are doing production or in search of this and that. Of course, there's quite a few unexpected or new things while we're doing the production, but overall base was pretty we found out really nicely. And I think it's just the collaboration of Anim working with modeling, with rigging, with actually lighting and surfacing as well, just because this movie was not that Anim can finish their animation on a different side and everyone else will just make the movie look pretty. We really had to understand what the lighting setup would be, how the characters would look with the actual surfacing. So yeah, that was, I quite enjoyed that development time, just because it was a lot of things were new, a lot of learning, and then likes of Archie, and then we have Chris Gooch and Justin as, the lighting suits and all. It was just a lot of nice and new information. And then what excited more is, you take this new knowledge now, add what you have on it, and then let's see how far we can go. And I think at the end the image looks amazing, and I think that's just the collaboration we end up having. But yes, those were the initial tests.
Awesome. And actually, Chrissy, I'm interested in those early stages as well, in terms of setting up the team. You've obviously had visual effects experience, but of course a few animated sequences and films as well. What was the difference between setting up things in terms of visual effects compared to animation here in the early stages?
I think, animation is generally long term, depending on the sequences that you get and the shows you pick up. Visual effects can be faster. So I think when I'm working on animated shows, it's important to realize that you're going to have this team for a really long time. And it's important to get those tests done properly and give it the time it deserves, rather than say, you can't say you've got 1 week to do this test and then that's it out of the whole schedule. You do have to be patient, flexible, maybe silently freaking out in the background how long something's taking in your own head, and completely trust your team, that they can deliver, that test and get the look that we're looking for. And what Kapil and Archie was saying, our team was so collaborative that it was almost like we had mind melds most of the way, and the communication was just really strong. So they'd just say, hey, Chrissy, we need another week on that. We'll need another 2 days on that. Or we've got an idea. Can you let us try this? Talk to the client, see if we've got more time on that. And animation is very particular like that. You've got to give it that space and that time to get those tests going, and you can't rush it. You can't be that person that's going, time's running out. And then the team on it, that we all chose together, was super important, because they were all as passionate as we were and so invested, and it's the team that make it at the end of the day, and you want them to love what they do. So yeah, had a best job ever.
Oh, that's so great. There's so many technical and artistic things I want to ask about. One of them that I think is so apparent, even when you just watch the first trailers, but as soon as you get into watching this film, I almost can't describe it. It is the kind of textures of the characters. And Archie, maybe coming to you, I mean, were those things modelled in? Were there paint overs done? Were there different kind of texture maps happening than usual? How did DNEG approach that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is exactly what I was referring to when I said, really reverse engineering our own pipeline to basically make it work. Because when they came to us, one of the biggest challenges was that they said that not only they want the environments to look beautiful and very stylized and pushed and still maintain the quality of New York, but characters, which is what you were alluding to just a second ago, is that they wanted those characters still to look like, they were painted with actual paint strokes, individual paint strokes. Now, normally when we make more traditional animated CG films, there is none of that, right? It's just a material that gets assigned to a specific, object or a prop or a character. So in this case, we started painting. So yes, you are absolutely right. We tried to avoid making the modeling, making some of those adjustments in modeling because it was going to be incredibly time consuming. And the artistic direction, if they gave us a node, undoing it would have been even more difficult. So because of that, we went for more of a painted look where we basically painted our characters first statically in 3D space. So what we did was, imagine if you were painting your 2D painting, but you basically are doing it in a 3 dimensions. So you're painting this character, rotating it more. So you are basically, you've painted now all the 360 turnaround of this character. And next challenge was, how do we make those features, those paint strokes move on the face, but in a realistic and normal fashion, because these are human characters. They're talking. They're not just some fantasy characters. They're regular, everyday people. So we wanted to make sure that they had emotions. They are awkward. They are uncomfortable. And all of that needed to be told. So this is where I was working with Kapil very closely, where basically, if they animated the facial expressions, we would do like hundreds of facial expressions as tests. And then we would see what individual paint stroke did in each of those facial poses. And then we made adjustments based on it. We were like, when he's getting angry, it's looking a little bit strange, those paint strokes, maybe we need to tone them down. So it became a truly a science project of figuring out how this whole thing would work, because it wasn't really there is parallels to many movies when you read about people's response to the movie and stuff like that. And we all know that Spider-Verse was one of the first kind of a revolutionary films that pushed this look. But even in Spider-Verse, they did not really go for a fully painted faces that we were doing. So we really didn't have a precedent of this. We couldn't just go to call one of my friends that worked on that project and go, how did you do this? There was no luxury like that. So it became us basically figuring it out. And this is why I was going to Chrissy and saying, I need another week, because I have an idea that I really want to make work. But truly at the end of the day, everything was catering that painted look, everything. So I told the guys, I said, forget all the technical knowledge imagine that you've forgotten 10, 20, 30 years of experience completely, and you are just in a whole new medium and you're starting over. So that was kind of the brief I was giving to everyone, that if you approach this from a traditional standpoint, you're going to be incredibly frustrated because it's just not going to work. So you need to open your mind as wide as humanly possible and push it. So once we got that working and we could act with characters while they're still painted looking, then we knew 100% that we could make this film. And to me, unlike Kapil, who did the motion test, which were received incredibly well, and everything, in my case, it was incredibly stressful because I am trying to come up with the way to tell the story, emotion, and relationships with a technique that's not really been used much in our industry. So that was the really, really huge technical challenge.
Right. It is fascinating, all the different things that have to come together. Kapil, you mentioned already the stepped animation, and I wanted to just ask you about that in particular. But did you find that there was something about, like, was it on twos or threes or fours or something else? What
Well,
worked and didn't work
yeah,
as you
that's
experimented?
yeah. Well, we kind of knew that what we didn't want it is it just being on twos all the time, which is basically, you animate in CG and you convert on twos, and that's what it is. Because that will look like we just animated in CG and converted into step. And we really wanted to stay away of that. And the reason why I said that Spider-Verse actually wasn't a reference initially and even to later on is just because Spider-Verse has a lot of detail in it. It's quite dynamic in terms of action. So it's a different kind of thing they're trying to achieve. Whereas what we wanted is the energy of Kid Cudi's music, and you really needed to dive deep into these characters. So we went with the route where you really have to think about your division. Your not even a single shot was just divided on twos or on ones or on threes. So we have shots where for 8 frames character doesn't move. It's just one pose, and some of the shots are actually on fours and threes divided in this way. It really came down to what really works. As long as the motion feel wrong, like whatever the character was trying to do, and then you are not getting distracted with a lot of extra jazz in it. So it was quite important for us to really understand those things. We did have Ted T, who's our animation head at DNEG. So initially what we ended up doing, we did a bunch of 2D animation classes, uh, and we went for full-fledged, where it was purely concentrated towards understanding the frame rate on 2D side of it. Like, when would you want to go on twos? When would you want to go on ones? When would you have like a mix of twos or threes? Things like that. And our movie ended up being, in most part, it was a mix of being on twos and threes. I think that's where it ended up being mostly. But it was never like one division of just like, animate and then divide it on twos. Like, it was not a formulated one. It all came down to what is required in the shot. If the shot requires just the character standing and looking and you really needed to go in, we just kept like 1 frame, not moving anything else at all. Versus we have sequences like Nightmare, where we are on ones as well at a certain point, because it all needed to flow pretty smoothly. Uh, so yeah, step animation, because step animation also was a decision, came in 2 ways. First, it needed to serve the painterly look. And my fear was, if you just divide mathematically on twos, it will just still steal away that magic. It still needs to feel like we took these puppets and put like enough hands on it to really spend time in it. So that was one. The other thing is being able to finish the movie on time. I think what my initial concentration was, we wanted something which really works, which actually we are happy to do, but we are also able to finish it within time. Because I've been in way too many projects, including all big studios as well, where you spend too much time initially, so you have beautiful looking sequences, and then you finish 60% of your movie because you need to finish it within 3 months, and the quality kind of comes down. And we just didn't really wanted it. So it was okay to give up on few things if that's what it takes. But what was really important is we are doing something we really like, we really enjoy. Also, it serves the purpose to the movie. So yeah, so we actually have sequences, especially the friends when they're talking on the bike. There's shots where it's a full-fledged shot, but Jabari doesn't move. He just talks a bit, but it fits. It fits in because it's not just about Jabari. It's the painting, overall painting, and that's what your emotions are not coming just from the character. It's just overall scene which is giving you that feeling. So yes,
Yeah, amazing.
yeah, that's where it was. Yeah.
Finishing the movie on time makes me realize I need to ask Chrissy, how the heck did DNEG Animation do this? It was COVID. I'm assuming it was quite a worldwide production. Obviously, London is a bit of a hub, but then, it was a Los Angeles thing as well. Tell me about the worldwide production side of it, Chrissy, plus the way that people worked remotely here.
Wow. Um, I think, I mean, we all got plunged into that world of COVID, and Intergalactic was an absolute pandemic show. It was all completely done at home in people's houses and their lounges and their bedrooms or wherever they were at the time. But I think part of the success of the show is because of the pandemic as well. We bonded like, I've never seen a team bond ever before. We were in each other's lives. I had a son that grew up through the show. He was always there. Everyone knew who he was because he had to be with me. So I think that was definitely part of it, but it was absolutely challenging, as you can imagine. Um, everyone in the world had a really hard time. So as a producer, emotionally, to help everybody through that was a huge part of my role. And that was really important to me, just making sure we were all aware. And there were hard times, just like everybody had them. And sometimes people just couldn't get up in the morning, or whatever it is. And we were just all so understanding of each other and the circumstances. You didn't know what you woke up to every morning of the day. So, and we had a team in India, we had a team in Canada, we had a team in London, we obviously had a client in LA. And you could, if you wanted to work, well, I could have 24 hours a day with the different time zones that you're waking up. But the way our team was and understanding, and we were there for each other, we made it work. And I think it finished on time and on budget because everyone was so understanding, and we could talk about it and find solutions together. But it was a huge challenge for sure.
Well, you really pulled it off, and I think I think you're right about some COVID projects. It actually brings the teams together in a different way, Chrissy, doesn't it? And maybe it's also part of where animation and VFX is heading. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but it does feel like it has opened the floodgates a little bit to enabling this kind of worldwide production.
I mean, I think so. And it gave us a deeper understanding of each other's lives and families and personal situations, whether you wanted to or not.
Yeah.
um, and we all understand that much better now. And, we've gone back into hybrid, which we all like as well. Like, I love going into the office, and then, I like being at home, but I don't want to do just at home, and I don't want to do just at office now. And I think lots of companies are realizing that within different stages of production. I mean, for sure, I think, at some stages of production, we should all definitely be together. It's better. But it's nice that there's a different way of thinking about things now, and, what people need out of their life.
Absolutely. Archie, I just want to also ask you another sort of technical overview question, and anyone can chime in about this as well. I'm always curious when you do have to approach this kind of production with a slightly different workflow. How do you mix and match the tools that you might normally use for a CG animated film? Going in from Maya to rendering, and I mean, we all know there's a lot of compositing done on these animated films.
Mm-hmm.
What was the mix here? Is it principally Maya? Was there lots of effects done in Houdini, and was there still a heavy compositing side to this film?
Absolutely. The compositing part of it was massive because it allowed us the freedom. It allowed us the freedom to really push the imagery. We used Nuke, which is the industry standard at the time, but and I mean, it's been for maybe last decade or so. But even within that software, which is incredibly powerful for compositing, we ended up writing our own tools within it. And this was a key on pretty much everywhere. You are absolutely right. We basically animation in Maya, a lot of the painting of characters and stuff was done in Mari. So we used the various in one of the philosophies we had in this project, Ian, is that this was really critical from the beginning. As soon as Chrissy, myself, and Kapil looked at the project and we knew what we were facing, we said, that binding yourself to standard tools in a pipeline is going to be the biggest mistake we could make as a team. So what we did was we kept an incredibly open mind about if we need to use another software, that's fine, even if it's not part of our pipeline and we've never used it before. So like Kapil mentioned, After Effects, it's not the software we normally use on our films, but there were a lot of tools, puppeteering tools, because for example, one of the things they wanted to do is they wanted to give us the paintings, literally a painted character. And they said, can you just animate them in 2D space so that arms move, their heads rotate slightly? It was a very subtle animation, nothing dramatic. So for that purpose, we found it that in order for us to be able to rig the painting, which is a crazy concept in itself, we rigged it and animated it in those packages. So we were bouncing around all over the place. We made our pipeline technical TD's life probably absolute hell for the last 2 years, because they had to constantly accommodate. I would go and research how can we do this, and then I would come back to them and I would be like, I need this software, this software, this software, and I want you to mix it all together, and I want you to make it work in our pipeline, which is easier said than done. And but idea was, again, getting back to the our standard pipeline, was to really not be bound by what we know. So it was, can we do this? No, let's call the software developer, let's call them and say, we want to do this, is it possible? They would say, no, it's not possible. We were like, okay, if we give you certain cycles with one of our developers in here, can we write a tool? And they would help us out as well. And so it was a very collaborative process, because as I said, even for them, they've never attempted to do any of this. So it was like, you guys are trying to do what? So it was very much like those kind of questions. But at the end of the day, we managed to really open it up. Some people were learning new packages during the film. They've never used that software before, but they have the prerequisite skill and they know how to do it. So they just need to learn where the buttons were and stuff like that. And they picked it up very quickly. So we did, for example, because this is a musical film, it's Kid Cudi's, it's not a musical, but it's the heavily based on music. So and Cudi's music, which is incredibly ethereal and trippy at times. So we could not, we were not allowed to have the actual soundtrack to the film during the production of the film, which made it an incredibly painful experience, because this album wasn't released, so they cannot distribute this album. Yet we need to animate to music at times. So you see the dilemma here. And so one of the things we agreed on is that they agreed to strip down all music and leave only the bass and drums on Cudi's tracks, and provide those for us so we could actually time everything properly to the rhythm of the music, even though we've never actually heard those songs until the release day, and so it was an incredibly difficult experience as well.
That's amazing. Kapil, what was that like? I mean, was that just something new that you'd not had to deal with like that before? And how did your animators cope with that?
Oh, we never actually had to do it before. Well, so the bass music was a thing. We did work on that, but it did reach to the point when we had dailies where Fletcher, director, would sit and say, "Hey, this frame number is when we are hitting the beat." So we had songs and situations where the moment character kiss is exactly when the beat is gonna hit the song or things like that. And we are literally animating blind, and then Fletch would listen from his side, then he'll send us the frame number. It's like, okay, if you hit this by this frame, then we're right. We actually had to adjust our whole animation sometimes few frames ahead or before, just because we just didn't have the right one. It would have been nicer to have the actual original soundtrack. Yes, it would have been much better, but we managed it. It worked out. But yes, it was a lot of blind animation, and then getting particular frames from director is how we were able to do it.
I've interviewed many music video artists who you would
Yeah.
be super surprised to hear don't actually hear the track
That would.
for exactly the same reason. So, I mean, they obviously can pull it off, and you guys have here too. Look, I feel like I could talk to you all day, but I think that's such a great wrap up
Same.
of the process. Thank you for going into it, and thank you so much for making it, guys. Really appreciate it. Great to talk to you.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
so
us.
much,
Thank you
man.
so
Yeah.
much. Yeah,
Thank you
yeah,
for calling
absolutely.
us.
It's fun.